Welcome to the Enterprise Mobility Roundup podcast, brought to you by BlueFletch. We discuss technology topics related to Android and workforce devices and how they intersect with business and mobility.
Thanks for joining us again today. Today we have Patrick McGlynn joining us. I'm Brett Cooper with Richard Makerson here from BlueFletch. And today we are going to talk about communication tools in the enterprise. And when we say the enterprise, we're typically referring to warehouses, delivery drivers, frontline workers, retail. Yeah. So then when Patrick, maybe you can give us some context around communication tools. Like what are the fundamental communication tools we see out there? And walk me through what those look like.
Yeah, with mobility in terms of that, I think the first one that pretty much everyone's going to be familiar with are the Walkie Talkies, and these have been around, I don't know, probably since 70s, before my time, that's for sure. But
since Smoking the Bandit came out.
There you go. But these are easy, low cost devices. You can run down to your local Radio Shack and purchase these. Maybe not anymore, but yeah. But just simple two-way communication back and forth. Really, great tools, honestly, and still in use in some retailers. Phone is another big one, being able to call out or talk to customers calling in. That's over the years been hardwire phones to, cellular devices. And now there's voice over IP as well. So can do that all over the network. Chat is another tool for communication. And I think this is something that, tools like Slack and Teams have made a lot more common in the enterprise, and users are becoming a lot more comfortable with this communication tool for just being able to text back and forth and at their convenience. And then finally is video. It's a newer communication tool for being able to share your screen, see exactly what the other user's seeing, and having that real-time communication back and forth. So those are the four big ones that we see nowadays in the enterprise. I know there's been other communication tools in the past,
when you're toolless.
Yeah.
Face to face, shouting across
Facts,
yes.
Facts.
A Post-it note, a bulletin board. Those things still exist in 2022.
What were the tubes called? Where you put the something in a tube and you stick it and you go.
Like at the bank.
The banks had those for a while. I remember I was at some companies in the 80s, 90s that had those. It's pretty crazy. And the last two you mentioned, Patrick, the chat and the video, I feel like a lot of that's been driven by consumers. We have mobile devices came out, and I remember was the first one you had to hit 4 times to get the letter E.
The T9,
yeah,
right? T9.
Yeah, and then they started actually getting keyboards, like the flip out keyboards. But I feel like chat for text messaging has really driven a lot of that back into the enterprise. And then you also have videos. I feel like videos with FaceTime, Apple bringing that out, has really driven back into the enterprise. But I guess the next thing to hop into, and Richard, maybe you can start this out. That for the first tool, the Walkie Talkies in the enterprise, I'm really interested in. When we talk to customers, they always ask us questions like, what does the tool landscape look like? What are my options out there? What should I be using for that? But, should I still be buying Walkie Talkies? What does that look like both on the walkie side and then on smart devices that are more single use?
Right. So Walkie Talkies were a great low barrier to entry for communication inside the four walls. Right. I could go, as Patrick mentioned, down to a Radio Shack or deal with my value-added reseller, buy a bunch of Walkie Talkies and deploy those out. The government makes certain public radio band frequencies available. Mm-hmm. So at certain ranges, it just works. You pick it up, and as long as you have power, it's as good as the battery itself. It was, a great choice. I think you still see those in a lot of retail situations today.
Yeah, especially those retailers with really large footprints. I know we've worked with some landscape companies over the year and some big box retailers, and they've got parking lots and, just large outdoor staging areas, and being able to communicate with someone just quickly over a pretty large range and not having to shout. It is a good tool and has been in use for many years there.
Do you guys see those going away, like Walkie Talkies going away as more of the cell phones start to have walkie functionality?
I see physical Walkie Talkies going away and moving more towards a digital space, whether it's Workforce Connect from Zebra. It could be Theatro feels almost like a walkie talkie with AI behind it to me. And then even what we're doing with BlueFletch chat, thinking about asynchronous walkie-talkie and visual voicemail type of communication, but it's still I push a button, I speak into it, and it goes to the person I need to type of experience.
Do we see a lot of the walkie-talkies and then that talking back to digital devices? Is that something we're seeing a lot of, or is that going away?
It's starting to go away. I mean, it was big maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So having
radio link servers, is what they're called?
RLS server, radio link servers that could sit in between the digital modern mobile devices and the more analog walkie-talkies to bridge that communication. But we got a big client here in Atlanta that's getting rid of theirs just because it's hard to find parts for or to replace. And if you have thousands of those, if one goes out, the communication in your store or one of your tools is out of play. So going to something where it could be centrally managed, I think a good digital walkie-talkie solution is where I see things headed.
Cool. And then on the next topic, Patrick, you talked about phone or VoIP. Like where does that fit into the big picture? Like what are we seeing where that works? And we have customers that are doing still actually taking calls inbound or making calls outbound. Where is that something where it's actually a thing?
Yeah, well, I've seen a couple of scenarios. One, a big one is delivery drivers. So when you're going out to make your deliveries, you might want to call to your customer before you arrive, give them a bit of a heads up. So those users do need some type of phone to contact, a customer, be it their home line or cell phone, just to give them that heads up. And then also with store managers, maybe another store manager wants to call them to check on some inventory or ask for a favor. Maybe they're dealing with inbound customer calls, asking to see if something's in stock. So there is some need for, I think, voice and phone in the enterprise still. And being able to converge all that into a single walkie-talkie device, as Rick mentioned, would be kind of the ideal scenario for everyone, I think.
There's also a number of companies that still have physical extensions. Probably started with a actual landline, then went to PBX, and now these modern mobile devices can tap into that PBX. But managing those is complex, it's expensive, and business opportunity. Who can crack doing away with PBX, but having a VoIP-like experience and being able to tie those calls together.
Yeah, I think the phone, I think a good example, when you mentioned this the other day, was when you go to any modern technology company and walk in the office, do they have phones on the desk?
No.
Yeah, I just think through the 90s, like every single office, you had like the gray Cisco phone. Mm-hmm. That would be a VoIP extension, and it would stop working once a month, and the IT guy would come out and do some magic on it and fix it. I guess on one of the follow-on questions I had, Richard, for you is the extension management. So you have, I can have a phone number, or there can be a phone number for a department. Like, what are best practices you see around that for people that do want to use VoIP? What's the state of the art, or what people think works for them operationally?
Yeah, it depends. I've seen both work well. So if your organization's business rules are, every department should have an extension, like that's great. What I tend to like to deploy, or I try to recommend, is having an extension that follows people. So if I log in and I know what group you're in, being able to put yourself in a hunt group.
Yeah, hunt groups.
So that, if I'm meant to work plumbing, I'm part of that extension pool. So I may be, a list of priority 1, 2, or 3, or 4 of who gets that phone call, and, just allow the technology to make things simpler. So like having a hunt group, having an extension that automatically follows people based on their role is where I would push things. But, I've seen it work very well where you have a dedicated phone with a dedicated extension, and people just use that phone to death.
The phone 407 would be the number. That's always the plumbing department phone.
Yes, you could write on the side of it, white out the extension number.
Mm-hmm. So Patrick, maybe you can talk a little bit about where do you see phones going, like for usage? Like where are the actual use cases over the next couple of years? I feel like you mentioned the other day things like Uber Eats. Like people are starting to text companies or stop calling companies. Do you see a usage for phone calls coming inbound to organizations?
Yeah, I think there is still a need, but potentially not directly to maybe an end user at, store A that you're trying to talk to. Maybe it's going through a call center, and then they're routing any type of request digitally to, via some type of task or assignment to that store to handle it. And I think the scenario when we were prepping for this, we talked about was, I used to call in to order a pizza, and that doesn't exist anymore. And it might in some of your mom and pops, but I think majority of users are probably now using tools like Uber Eats and actually placing their orders there and not ever even having to pick up a phone. So there's definitely the need for the phones for, those scenarios where you have an exception or you need to talk to a specialist, as I mentioned earlier. But it's just going to become, I think, less and less of individual sites spending time on the phone. And ideally, there's probably, AI and smart tools out there that can kind of intercept and handle all those simple communications.
No, that's a great call out, just leveraging those technology buffers so that you can have things in between that one person and that one extension to provide a great customer experience.
Right. So then the next topic you dropped on there, Patrick, or the next communication style was chat.
Yeah.
I always find it funny. I think one of the questions we ask employees when they start BlueFletch and they introduce themselves to the company is to tell people what their first screen name was. Mm-hmm. And Richard and I were talking about ours was AOL Instant Messenger.
Yep.
Which was, I think that was that early 90s, mid 90s, like 94, 95.
Yeah.
That came out. But chat has really, I feel like chat started out as a sort of gimmicky thing and has really driven into a useful tool that a lot of people have. But I guess, Richard, maybe you could talk about what you've seen over the last 20 years of technology from a chat perspective.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of memories with AOL Instant Messenger, because, it took me from...
Do you remember what your screen name was?
Mm-hmm. I'd save it for after this podcast, but I do remember. It's not that bad. But, yeah, it took me from middle school to high school through college. Then I had to get a professional screen name when I joined Accenture. I couldn't be Pretty Rick anymore. But even nowadays, everybody has a phone, and even grandparents can chat. People understand how to create a talk group or a chat group, and so that inevitably is coming down to the enterprise experience, especially when in these enterprises you have a younger workforce that demands these tools. They use it every day, so why not leverage this muscle that they exercise all the time to help elevate them at the job.
Yeah. And Patrick, what are the drawbacks? Do you see companies still pushing back? I feel like there was a time where nobody wanted to chat because they're like, that's for the kids. Like, do you see companies that's still being a thing?
I do. I think there's a bit of a stigma of, being on your phone, especially if you're on the clock and supposed to be helping with customers. So, there's people just assume you're not doing your job and you're slacking off or chatting with friends when you might actually be doing, a productivity task. So, I think that's one of the downsides. The upsides, though, there are pretty awesome. That the ability to asynchronously chat. So I'm not having to actually be on the phone with someone and listening to them. I can still be doing my task. And then when it's convenient for me, actually see what they had to say. And, being able to attach images as we've spoken about as well, is just adding a lot more context to a conversation that you might not be able to achieve with just Walkie Talkies or phone calls. So, I love chat in the enterprise, and I see it growing, especially as, teams are becoming more comfortable with that and allowing their users to take part in chatting on devices.
Yeah, for that picture scenario, what's the most common thing you see with people attaching pictures to chat?
Just asking for tips and tricks on things, or if anyone knows, this box or crate sitting on the floor, where does that go? What is this? What needs to happen to this? There was no, instruction left with it. Does anyone know what's going on? I think that's a great scenario.
Can we verify that something's actually in stock at the store before I send a customer across town?
Yep.
To go get it?
or does anyone have this part that broke off of, this piece, and, just being able to actually solution things quickly. And yeah.
What was the one, Richard, you had? Plumbing? What part is this?
Yes.
Taking a picture and sending it to somebody if you're the front desk.
The house was built in the 20s. This part doesn't work anymore. Do you sell it at all?
I'm your replacement. Patrick, what about voice to text? Is that something I feel like I have a lot of friends that they don't type, they actually just talk to their phone and it does that. Is that something we're seeing in the enterprise at all?
Yeah, I haven't seen it personally, but I hope to see that. I mean, I'm a big user and adopter of that, especially when I'm driving, can use my Siri tool to type out a text for me and send that out. It's a great way to hands-free, also still leverage, your chat protocols and type that out. So it's kind of a convergence of that push to talk and chat features, but I think it is, just a way for time savings. So you're not having to spend all that time typing a long message out. You can just quickly dictate it. And the voice recognition tools these days are incredible. I don't know if you guys are using those on your laptops, but that in mobile as well. I'm always amazed at how great they pick up what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's a narrow use case where I need to be hands-free, use voice, also safety. So if I'm driving a forklift, like you said, driving a car, you see that typically enterprises often are noisy environments, so sometimes I can make it tough, but definitely around that safety and hands-free use case, you see that a lot.
Got it.
Or see that more often.
The last bucket, Patrick, you talked about was video, and Richard, I know you've done a lot of big projects with video in the last few years. Where does video chat actually make sense in the enterprise? What do those use cases look like?
So piggybacking on safety, I've had a number of customers leverage video like for a war room type of experience, right? So, if I'm working for a big utility that produces nuclear power and we need to look at an issue, you could send one person or you could send a team, but you can also be supported by experts from around the world or a war room. And so instead of sending 20 or 30 people into a really dangerous space, you could minimize that risk, but also have them available. That's a really great use of video. I mean, and the other piece is if I just need to show somebody something in real time, whether that's how to do something or verifying something is physically there, video is really great for that.
Do you see that being used in retail for customer engagement, especially with people not wanting to go into stores?
It could be. There, is a general theme happening where we're able to what feels like communicate directly to a store, but it's often driven by process and technology, whether that process is a call center or a help center or AI to be technology. But, I see a day where, I could be looking up something at the Home Depot and click a button and talk directly to a store associate, or be able to talk to an expert and get them to walk me through how to set up a tent, or back to the plumbing example, how to replace this garbage disposal.
Okay. Patrick, any other concepts you see with video coming into play?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on that last one, you mentioned that consultation with a specialist or an expert. I think it was, I forget whose commercial it was, but during COVID, a bike shop opened up an online consultation where you could really one-on-one FaceTime or video chat rather with an expert who can help fit you for a bike, talk to you about what your needs are, and having that expert consultation is pretty good use of that tool. I don't know if many retailers are actually adopting that yet, but that's a good use case. Or other items or areas where I see would maybe ensuring that things that are unique or one of a kind meet your needs or requirements, things, ensuring they're valid, or the validity of something. It's another good way where video it's hard to trick anyone. If you're actually doing real-time video, you can't hide it with, altered images or just going off of someone's word. It's a good way to show, actual validity of something.
Yeah, I think we saw a high-end furniture store that would they would actually take a video and pictures of stuff before they rolled a truck to your house.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
That's the worst. They're delivering something and then getting it and being, I don't want this couch.
Yep. Yeah, or after repairs to show that something was repaired successfully before sending it out. So, yeah, I think there are a number of use cases around that. So I think we will see that grow in the next few years.
Got it. And then on that note, other future trends, like as you guys think about communication tools, communication styles, like Richard, are the things you see that are going to be happening in the next 2 to 5 years in communication for enterprise tools?
Yeah, I'll try to go through 2 or 3 of them really quickly. I know I named one, talking about how to tie, a customer who is online directly to a store associate or an expert. This some of the things we're exploring with BlueFletch Chat. The other is, thinking about video. Like if I'm buying something to have that consultative experience, phoning an expert, shout out to Jake Paul. If I'm buying, first edition Pokemon cards, if you could have had, a video chat and, with an expert there as well to talk through that validity, he could have saved, $3.5 million with that as well. The other thing is, always connected AI assistant, whether that's via voice or via chat. I'm seeing a lot of companies use that internally in their chats. So having like a help robot. I've seen it happen on the legal side to be able to ask certain questions and you have AI spit an answer back out to you versus somebody from a team taking that off the pile, finding where an answer is and giving it back to the team. So those are, 3 trends that, probably over the next 5 to 10 years I see happening more and more.
Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, I think one of the ones we're currently seeing right now is just the convergence of technologies. I know just a quick story. One retailer was using Walkie Talkies. Store managers were carrying wireless phones. They had scanners for all their inventory control and even carrying iPads for some of their reporting and time management tasks as well. So, they did a whole device refresh and converged literally all those tools into a single device and one device that can do walkie-talkie, make phone calls, all their inventory control as well. Of course, they could also expand that to video chat, as we mentioned as well. So, that I think that's a great undertaking by companies, and maybe carrying that even further into the future is bringing that all into someone's personal phone or the corporate owned personally enabled devices where you've got a division of your personal stuff and then your work profile, and you can have that all onto your single carry device that is your work and your personal, and have time boxed things and making sure your work's not carrying over to your personal life. Android's making that a little bit easier, but I could see that potentially being, a way forward with communication tools.
And Richard, I know you and your team have been doing a lot of work around consolidation. As BlueFletch Chat is the tool you have that's specific to these a lot of these work cases. What are, if you have to think about that same question, like where to invest or place your bets in the next few years, like what are the things on communication that companies should be doing?
Yeah, just giving people in your organization the ability to chat, period. I think you start there. There's been some use cases where we see that they've tried to narrow the window, like to make it to buttons, or we don't want people just chatting because all they're going to do is talk about University of Alabama versus UGA, but they might not. And that's data you can collect because that employer to employee relationship is much different than Apple's relationship with us as a business to consumer relationship. So, I'd say, smart money is putting chat out there, letting them leverage it, but also looking at the data and looking at where you can find efficiencies, where you can invest your time and money to give them what they want, because they'll find, amazing workarounds, just getting things solved through chat. The other piece is just connecting other parts of the organization, right? So, being, an in-store associate or working in the warehouse, if I'm connected to, somebody throughout corporate or help desk more efficiently, that's just going to save time for me being away from my job or job area, being on the phone or having to type an email and then checking it to make sure that it's come. So that is going to clean up and just save time throughout the organization. And the other piece would be one of the examples I mentioned earlier is, thinking about your consumers and how you can connect them to deeper parts of your organization. I had a really great experience with Home Depot setting up our new office. Ordered 2 industrial size shelves. They delivered 1. I didn't get a follow up on the second one, and I'm sure I was talking to somebody in a help desk or in a different type, not necessarily in Home Depot company, but I knew that they were talking to somebody in that store on my behalf. It was asynchronous, so as long as that window was open, I could handle it throughout the day. And the next day I had my shelf, so that was great. That it was very easy to use. It didn't require my attention holding a phone up to my ear for 45 minutes. And, at my leisure, my problem got solved.
It's awesome. Yeah. Nobody wants to sit on hold for 45 minutes.
At all.
Yeah. You can do all your work and stuff on the side and just keep your little chat box open on the side.
Yeah, I do love the chat features for that. Yep. Well, Patrick and Richard, thanks for chatting through this with us today. And I think I mentioned this in the last one, but if anybody has any future ideas or things you're looking for us to talk about, shoot us your ideas. And if we pick yours, we'll send you some free swag. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Enterprise Mobility Roundup podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, please take a few moments to rate us. If you would like to listen to future episodes, please subscribe. To learn more about mobility topics or submit any questions, visit us at BlueFletch.com.